I'm Savannah 32, and until recently I had a successful marketing career and a place I called home. Growing up, life was perfect until my parents divorced when I was 14. Dad moved to Seattle, and 2 years later, Mom married Brian, who had a 12-year-old daughter, Megan. I tried embracing our blended family, but slowly my childhood home became foreign territory. Nothing could have prepared me for the day Mom told me I needed to move out, because Megan wanted my bedroom as her makeup studio. I'd love to know where you're watching from. If you're enjoying this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to join our storytelling family. Have you ever felt replaced by someone in your own home? Share your experience in the comments below. I grew up in a cozy colonial-style house in suburban Chicago, with a backyard swing set my dad built, and a kitchen where Mom taught me to bake chocolate chip cookies every Sunday. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. My mom, Catherine, was loving but sometimes emotionally distant, always a bit reserved with her affection. She showed her love through acts of service rather than words or hugs. Dad, on the other hand, was the emotional one, always ready with encouragement and warm embraces. When I was 14, their marriage fell apart. There weren't dramatic fights or scandalous affairs, just two people who had grown apart and couldn't find their way back to each other. The divorce was relatively amicable, but it shattered my sense of security. Dad accepted a job opportunity in Seattle, promising to fly me out for holidays and summer breaks. At 14, I understood the practicalities, but still felt abandoned as I watched him drive away in a moving truck. For the next 2 years, it was just Mom and me in that suddenly too big house. Something unexpected happened. We became closer. Without Dad mediating our relationship, Mom and I developed a friendship I hadn't known was possible. We started having movie nights on Fridays, took weekend trips to downtown Chicago, and even redecorated the living room together. For the first time, I felt like I truly knew my mother. "I never had this with my mom," she confessed one night as we painted our toenails matching shades of burgundy. "She was always too busy with church activities and volunteer work to just sit and talk." I remember feeling special, chosen somehow. We had found our rhythm as a duo. Then came Brian. Mom met him at a pharmaceutical company conference. She in medical sales, he in research and development. Their connection was immediate and intense. Within 3 months, he was a fixture at our dinner table, his deep laugh filling our previously quiet evenings. "Savannah, I really care about your mother," he told me one afternoon when Mom was grocery shopping. "I want you to know I respect what you two have built here, and I'm not trying to replace your dad." I appreciated his directness. At 16, I wasn't looking for a replacement father, but I could see how happy Mom was with him. Brian was attentive, bringing her coffee just how she liked it, listening intently when she spoke about her day. He seemed to genuinely care about my college plans too, offering to connect me with friends in marketing when I mentioned my interest in the field. "There's someone else I'd like you to meet," Mom said about 5 months into their relationship. "Brian's daughter, Megan. She's 12 and lives primarily with her mother in Evanston, but she stays with Brian every other weekend." I was nervous but open to meeting her. Maybe we could be like sisters, something I'd always secretly wanted. Megan was small for 12, with Brian's dark hair and serious eyes. She seemed shy at first, barely making eye contact as she mumbled hello. "Megan's very creative," Brian said proudly. "She loves art and fashion design." "That's cool," I offered. "I could show you my sketchbook sometime if you want. I took some design classes at school last year." She just shrugged, retreating into herself. I didn't take it personally. She was 12, meeting her dad's new girlfriend's daughter. Awkward for anyone. I figured we had time to develop a relationship. 6 months later, Mom and Brian got married in a small ceremony at a local botanical garden. I wore a lavender bridesmaid dress, while Megan, also a bridesmaid, wore pale pink. I noticed Mom fussing over Megan's hair before the ceremony, carefully pinning tiny flowers in her carefully curled hair. "You look beautiful," Mom said, stepping back to admire her work. She glanced at me. "Oh, Savannah, your dress strap is twisted. Fix that before the photos, okay?" It was a small moment, but it stayed with me. I brushed it off as Mom trying to make Megan feel welcome in our new family configuration. After the wedding, our household dynamics shifted subtly. Every other weekend, our routines changed to accommodate Megan. Mom would prepare Megan's favorite meals, something she had never done for me. My love of vegetable stir-fry was a family joke. Savannah and her rabbit food. But Megan's preference for chicken fingers with the breading done exactly right became a household priority. The first major change came 3 months after the wedding when Brian suggested redecorating Megan's room, previously our guest room. She needs a space that feels like hers, he explained as painters transformed the walls from beige to a bright turquoise Megan had selected. New furniture followed, a canopy bed, a custom desk for her art projects, floating shelves for her collectibles. Meanwhile, my room remained unchanged from my early teens with the same IKEA furniture and faded purple walls I'd chosen at 13. "Can we update my room too?" I asked Mom one day. "You're heading to college soon," she replied. "It doesn't make sense to invest in redecorating now. Besides, you're hardly home with all your activities." She wasn't wrong. Between school, my part-time job at a local boutique, and preparing college applications, I wasn't home much. Still, the contrast between the attention lavished on Megan's space and the neglect of mine felt symbolic of a larger shift. I tried to connect with Megan, inviting her to join me for movies or shopping trips when she visited, but she usually declined. "No thanks," she'd say without looking up from her phone. "I'm good." By the time I graduated high school, Megan had established herself as a semi-permanent fixture in our home. Her weekends expanded to include occasional weeknights when her mother had work commitments, and her presence increasingly dictated family plans. I chose to attend Northwestern University partly for its excellent marketing program and partly to stay close to home to save money on housing. Mom seemed relieved when I announced my decision to commute from home. "Smart financial choice," she said approvingly. "You can put the money you save toward graduate school later." What I didn't realize then was that staying home would give me a front-row seat to my gradual replacement in my mother's life. My college years marked a distinct shift in our household dynamics. While I navigated challenging marketing courses and internships, our home underwent both physical and emotional transformations. Brian's influence grew steadily. What started as suggestions about household matters evolved into decisive control over family finances and decisions. "Brian thinks we should invest in renovating the kitchen before looking at vacation properties," Mom announced one evening, though we'd been planning a family lake house for years. "I thought we were saving for the lake house first," I questioned. "Plans change, Savannah," she replied with a slight edge. "Brian has more experience with investments and property values." The kitchen renovation was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, the house transformed room by room. New hardwood floors replaced the carpet I'd grown up with, walls came down to create an open-concept main floor, and the backyard swing set, where I'd spent countless hours, was dismantled to make way for an elaborate stone patio and fire pit. "Megan loves having her friends over for s'mores," Mom explained when I expressed surprise at the change. Speaking of Megan, her presence in our home expanded significantly. What began as weekend visits gradually extended to full weeks during summer breaks and holidays. At 14, then 15, she blossomed from the quiet, withdrawn girl I'd first met into a confident, often demanding teenager who clearly understood her power in the family dynamic. Our traditional mother-daughter activities began disappearing from the calendar. The cooking classes Mom and I had taken together for years were canceled when they conflicted with Megan's dance recitals. Our annual Black Friday shopping tradition was abandoned because Megan gets anxious in crowds. "We can go another day," Mom said, not meeting my eyes. "It'll be less crowded anyway." But another day never materialized. Meanwhile, my bedroom remained a time capsule from my early teens, while the rest of the house was transformed according to Megan's preferences. The family room, once filled with bookshelves housing my mom's extensive mystery novel collection, was reimagined as a creative space with an elaborate art table for Megan's projects. The novels were boxed and moved to the basement. "Megan needs room to express herself," Brian explained when I asked about the missing books. "Your mother doesn't really read those anymore anyway." That wasn't true. Mom had always been an avid reader. But she nodded in agreement, another small surrender in a growing pattern. By my junior year of college, I had secured a prestigious marketing internship that often required late nights and early mornings. Returning home exhausted after particularly challenging days, I'd sometimes find Megan and her friends sprawled across the living room, music blaring, craft supplies everywhere. "Could you keep it down a bit?" I'd ask. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." "We're just having fun," Megan would reply, making minimal effort to lower the volume. "It's not even 10 o'clock. When I'd approach Mom about these disruptions, her response was always some variation of, "She's a teenager, Savannah. She needs social interaction. You were the same way at her age." But I hadn't been. I'd been a conscientious student who respected household rules and others' need for quiet and space. After graduating with honors, I accepted an entry-level position at a marketing firm in downtown Chicago. The salary was decent, but not enough to afford Chicago's steep rental prices, especially with student loans to repay. Following my carefully constructed 5-year plan, I continued living at home, contributing to household expenses, while aggressively saving for a down payment on my own place. "Smart girl," Brian commented when I outlined my financial strategy over dinner. "Property values in Chicago aren't getting any lower." Mom seemed pleased with my practical approach, and for a while things stabilized into a workable routine. I left early for work, often returned late, and spent weekends either catching up on sleep or out with friends. This arrangement minimized conflicts with Megan, now 17, and increasingly territorial about her space in the house. Then came the incident with my clothes. I had invested in several high-quality pieces for client meetings: a tailored blazer, silk blouses, and a particularly expensive cashmere sweater that had been a graduation gift to myself. One Friday, I came home early to prepare for an important presentation on Monday, planning to review my notes and ensure my outfit was pristine. The blazer and sweater were missing from my closet. I found them in Megan's room. The blazer thrown across her bed, the sweater on the floor near her bathroom door. The sweater had a large makeup stain on the front, and the blazer smelled strongly of the vanilla body spray Megan favored. "Megan," I confronted her when she returned home later. "Why did you take my clothes without asking?" She barely glanced up from her phone. "I needed something nice for my college tour visit. Chill out. They're just clothes." "The sweater has a stain on it. That's not just clothes. That was a $300 sweater I saved for." "I didn't know it would stain." She shrugged. "Send me the cleaning bill if it's such a big deal." When I brought the issue to Mom expecting support, I was stunned by her response. "Savannah, she's applying to colleges. She wanted to look professional. She's just exploring her style and trying to find herself right now." "By ruining my professional clothes that I need for work?" I asked incredulously. "Don't be so materialistic," Mom replied. "It's not like you can't afford to replace it with your job. Megan's still building her wardrobe." That night, I installed a lock on my bedroom door. When Mom questioned it, I simply said, "I'm just creating boundaries. I need to protect my property." The lock became symbolic of the wider realization setting in this house. Once my sanctuary had become a place where I needed to defend my space and belongings. The power dynamics had shifted irrevocably, with Megan's wants and needs taking precedence over mine. Brian's influence had reshaped our family culture, and more disturbingly, my mother had not just accepted these changes, but had become an active participant in them. I began making more concrete plans to move out, increasing my savings contributions, and browsing real estate listings during lunch breaks. My timeline accelerated from 5 years to 3 then, to as soon as possible. But housing prices in Chicago continued to climb faster than my savings account, and the financial reality of renting while trying to save remained daunting. When I attempted to discuss these feelings of displacement with Mom during a rare moment alone, her response left me cold. "You're an adult now, Savannah. You can't expect things to stay the same forever. Megan's still finding her way, and we need to support her through these formative years." The message was clear. I was expected to be self-sufficient, while Megan required ongoing support and accommodation. My strength had become justification for withholding the very nurturing that was lavished on my stepsister. As Megan entered her senior year of high school, the preferential treatment reached new heights. College application season became a family-wide project, with Brian and Mom helping her craft essays, visiting campuses, and discussing scholarship opportunities. No one had helped me with my applications. It had been assumed I could handle it myself. "You were always so independent," Mom said when I pointed out the discrepancy. Megan needs more guidance. But what I was beginning to understand was that my independence had never been entirely my choice. It had been a necessity born from the gradual withdrawal of support as my mother built her new family, a family in which I was increasingly positioned as an adult roommate rather than a daughter. The makeup room ultimatum came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I had just received a promotion to senior marketing associate and was celebrating quietly with a glass of wine on the patio when Brian's SUV pulled into the driveway. Megan bounded out, now 22, and home from her third different college in 4 years. She'd recently dropped out of her business program, announcing she'd found her true calling as a makeup artist and beauty influencer. "Where's Mom?" she asked, barely acknowledging my congratulations on her new career direction. "Still at work, I think. She usually gets home around 6 on Tuesdays." Megan disappeared inside, leaving me to enjoy the mild spring evening alone. An hour later, Mom arrived and I heard excited voices from the kitchen. Curious, I went inside to find Mom, Brian, and Megan huddled around the island counter looking at something on Megan's laptop. "This is exactly what I need to take my content to the next level," Megan was saying, gesturing at the screen. "All the successful beauty influencers have dedicated spaces for filming. My bedroom doesn't have the right lighting or background." "It's quite an investment," Brian replied, though his tone suggested he was already convinced. "Professional lighting, backdrop, storage for all your products." "But think of the return once my channel takes off," Megan argued. "Some beauty influencers make 6 figures a year. I just need the right setup to compete." Mom noticed me hovering in the doorway. "Savannah, perfect timing. We're just about to start dinner." Megan's telling us about her new career plans. Throughout the meal, Megan dominated the conversation with elaborate descriptions of her planned content, name-dropping influencers I'd never heard of, and emphasizing how crucial a professional setup would be to her success. "The problem is space," she finally sighed, pushing her barely touched dinner away. "My room is too small for all the equipment I need. The lighting is terrible and there's no room for product storage." Mom and Brian exchanged a look I immediately recognized, the kind of silent communication that preceded decisions I wouldn't like. "We might have a solution," Mom said, carefully setting down her fork. "We've been thinking that it might be time for some changes around here." My stomach tightened. "What kind of changes?" "Well," Mom continued, not quite meeting my eyes, "you've been doing so well at work with your promotion and everything. You're established in your career now." "Thank you," I said, confused about where this was heading. Brian jumped in. "What your mother is trying to say is that you're at a point in your life where you should be looking at having your own place. You're 26, financially stable, building your career." "I'm saving for a down payment," I reminded them. "The housing market in Chicago is expensive and I'm trying to be financially responsible by not throwing money away on rent." "We understand that," Mom said quickly. "But circumstances change, plans evolve. Megan needs a dedicated space for her new career, and we've been thinking—" "We need your room," Megan interrupted bluntly. "It's the biggest bedroom besides the master, it gets the best natural light, and it has that alcove that would be perfect for product storage." The room went silent as I processed what was happening. "You want me to move out so Megan can use my bedroom as a makeup studio?" "It's not just a makeup studio," Megan corrected, rolling her eyes. "It's a content creation space. This is my career we're talking about. And saving for a house is my future we're talking about." I countered, looking to Mom for support. Instead, she said, "We think 2 months is a reasonable time frame for you to find a new place. That gives you plenty of time to apartment hunt and adjust your financial plans." 2 months, I echoed, disbelief washing over me. "You're giving me an eviction notice." "Don't be so dramatic," Brian said dismissively. "It's not an eviction, it's just a natural progression. You're an adult with a good job. Megan is just starting out and needs support to launch her career." "And I don't deserve support for my goals?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "You're established," Mom repeated, as if this explained everything. "You don't need the same kind of help Megan does right now." "I've been saving for 3 years," I said. "I'm still at least a year away from having enough for a decent down payment. This completely derails my plans." "Plans change," Brian said firmly. "We all have to adapt." Megan had already pulled out her phone and was taking pictures of my room. I'm thinking of painting it a soft pink, better for my complexion on camera, and maybe removing the closet door to create an open shelving system for my product display. You haven't even moved out yet and she's already redecorating, I asked incredulously. Megan's just excited about her new venture. Mom said, her tone warning me to drop the subject. We should be supportive. I looked around the table, at Brian's impassive face, at Mom's averted eyes, at Megan's barely concealed satisfaction, and realized with stunning clarity that I had already been replaced. This house was no longer my home. Perhaps it hadn't been for years. I see, I said quietly, standing up. If you'll excuse me, I need some air. I walked out to the backyard, my childhood swing set long gone, replaced by Megan's preferred patio design. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. The betrayal cut deep. Not just the demand to move out, but the casual way it was delivered, as if my plans and needs were inconsequential compared to Megan's latest whim. Later that night, I heard Megan and Mom in the hallway outside my room. The lighting in here is perfect for morning tutorials, Megan was saying. Once we take down those dark curtains and paint it a lighter color, it'll be Instagram ready. Just be patient, Mom responded. Savannah needs time to adjust to the idea. She's always so serious about everything, Megan complained. It's just a room. But it wasn't just a room. It was the last piece of my childhood home that still belonged to me, and now that too was being taken away to make space for someone else's dreams, while mine were dismissed as expendable. Over the next week, I made multiple attempts to speak with my mother alone. I wanted to understand how she could so easily discard my carefully constructed plans, how she could prioritize Megan's impulse career change over my years of disciplined saving. But every time I tried to catch her for a private conversation, Brian or Megan seemed to materialize. Mom, can we talk? I asked one evening when I heard her in the kitchen. Sure, honey, what's up? She replied. But before I could steer us toward a private space, Brian appeared in the doorway. Catherine, did you call that contractor about the estimates for Megan's room renovations? He asked, effectively ending any chance of the conversation I wanted to have. On Thursday evening, I came home early, hoping to catch Mom before the others arrived. I found her sorting through mail at the kitchen counter and seized the opportunity. Mom, we need to talk about this moving situation, I began. She sighed, putting down the stack of envelopes. Savannah, I know you're upset, but this decision wasn't made lightly. It feels pretty light from where I'm standing, I countered. You're upending my financial plans for Megan's latest hobby. It's not a hobby, she said defensively. She's building a career. She's had 3 careers in the last 2 years, I reminded her. The jewelry making, the fitness coaching, and now this. Meanwhile, I've been consistently working toward homeownership since graduation. That's exactly it, Mom said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. You've always been the responsible one, the planner. You'll land on your feet no matter what. Megan needs more support to find her path. So I'm being punished for being responsible? I asked incredulously. Mom shook her head. Nobody's punishing you. We're just acknowledging different needs at different life stages. I was about to respond when I heard voices from the family room. Brian and Megan had come home earlier than expected. Frustrated by another interrupted opportunity, I retreated to my room. The next day, I came home late from work to find the house quiet. Passing by the family room, I overheard Mom and Brian speaking in low voices, not realizing I was home. I feel bad about the timing, Mom was saying. She was really counting on staying here until she had her down payment saved. Catherine, we've discussed this, Brian replied firmly. Savannah has always been independent. She doesn't need us the way Megan does. She'll adapt and be fine. But she seemed so hurt, Mom said hesitantly. That's because she's used to getting her way, Brian responded. She's always been self-sufficient, which is great, but it means she doesn't understand what it's like to struggle the way Megan does. Megan needs this opportunity, this support. Savannah will be fine on her own. She always has been. Their words struck me like physical blows. My self-sufficiency, my responsibility, traits I had thought my mother valued, were being used against me, twisted into justifications for withdrawing support. Meanwhile, Megan's struggles, largely self-created through impulsive decisions and lack of follow-through, were positioned as reasons she deserved more help, more resources, more consideration. I couldn't hold back any longer. I stepped into the room, making my presence known. "So that's it," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the emotion churning inside me. "I don't get support because I don't need it enough, because I don't create enough drama or make enough bad decisions." Mom startled, clearly embarrassed at being overheard. "Savannah, we didn't hear you come in." "Clearly," I replied. "Otherwise, you might not have been so honest about how you see me." "We weren't talking about you that way," she protested weakly. "You literally said I don't need you the way Megan does," I countered. "That I'll be fine on my own because I always have been. When did being responsible become a reason to withdraw support from your child?" Brian stood up, assuming his mediator posture. "Savannah, you're taking this too personally. We're just trying to balance everyone's needs." "No, you're prioritizing Megan's wants over my needs," I corrected him. "There's a difference." "That's not fair," Mom interjected. "We've supported you throughout college, let you live here rent-free while you saved. I pay utilities and groceries," I reminded her. "And yes, you supported me through college, as parents typically do. But now you're kicking me out to convert my bedroom into a filming studio for Megan's latest whim, completely disregarding the financial plans I've been working toward for years." "Maybe if you were more vulnerable, sometimes people would want to take care of you too," Mom said, the words escaping before she could stop them. The statement hung in the air between us, revealing more than she had perhaps intended. In her mind, my strength was a reason to withhold nurturing, while Megan's neediness was rewarded with attention and resources. "I shouldn't have to perform vulnerability to deserve my mother's support," I said quietly. "I shouldn't have to manufacture crises to be prioritized in my own family." Brian stepped between us, physically inserting himself into the confrontation. "I think we all need to calm down. Savannah, you're creating drama when Megan needs stability right now. Her career is at a critical juncture." "And my life isn't?" I asked. "My financial future isn't important." "That's not what we're saying," Mom began, but I cut her off. "It's exactly what you're saying. You're saying that my carefully constructed plans are less important than Megan's impulsive career change. You're saying that I matter less in this family." "No one said that," Brian insisted, his tone growing sharper. From the doorway came Megan's voice. "What's going on? I could hear you guys from upstairs." She entered the room, taking in the scene with a practiced look of concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Brian assured her quickly. "Just a little family discussion." "About my studio?" Megan asked, coming to stand beside her father. "Savannah, are you having second thoughts about moving out? Because I've already ordered some equipment and the timeline is pretty tight for my launch plan." The casual entitlement in her voice pushed me over the edge. "No, Megan, I'm not having second thoughts. I'm having first thoughts about why my mother thinks your makeup videos are more important than my financial stability." "That's not what this is about," Mom protested. "Isn't it?" I challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, that's exactly what it looks like." Megan adopted a sympathetic expression that made my skin crawl. "I know change is hard, Savannah, but you're so capable and successful. You'll find an amazing apartment, and this will all work out for everyone." Her condescension was the final straw. I turned to leave the room, pausing in the doorway to deliver one last thought. "You know what's interesting? Everyone keeps talking about how independent and capable I am, but nobody considers that maybe I learned to be that way because I had to. Because at some point I realized I couldn't count on the people who should have been supporting me." I retreated to my room and called the one person who might understand: my father. Though we weren't as close as I wished due to the physical distance and his tendency to avoid emotional conversations, I needed an ally. "Dad," I said when he answered, my voice finally breaking, "Mom's kicking me out of the house." "What? Why?" he asked, clearly surprised. I explained the situation: Megan's makeup career, the room conversion, the 2-month timeline, and the devastating conversation I'd just had. "I'm sorry, Savannah." he said, genuine concern in his voice. That doesn't seem right. Have you tried talking to your mom privately? I've been trying all week, I said. But either Brian or Megan always interrupts or mom deflects. Do you need financial help? He offered. I could send something to help with a security deposit. I appreciated the gesture, but it highlighted another painful reality. While my father wanted to help, he was too far removed from my daily life to offer the emotional support I craved. Money wasn't the heart of the issue. It was my mother's betrayal. Thanks, Dad. I might take you up on that, I said, not wanting to hurt his feelings by refusing. But it's not just about the money. It's about feeling like I don't matter to Mom anymore. I know, sweetheart, he sighed. I wish I could be there for you more consistently. The distance makes it hard. After we hung up, I made a decision. I wouldn't wait 2 months. I wouldn't endure watching Megan measure my room for her ring lights and makeup storage while I was still living in it. I wouldn't subject myself to further evidence that I had been relegated to an inconvenient afterthought in my mother's life. The next day was Saturday. Mom, Brian, and Megan would be attending a wedding showcase. Megan had recently appointed herself a wedding makeup specialist despite having no formal training or experience. The house would be empty for hours. I spent the morning researching apartments, finding a small studio within my budget. It was in a less desirable neighborhood and would significantly deplete my savings, but it was available immediately. I signed the lease online, scheduled a move-in for that afternoon, and began packing. With efficient determination, I sorted through my belongings. Clothes, books, personal mementos. Anything essential came with me. Furniture and larger items would have to stay. My new place was too small. By noon, my car was loaded with suitcases and boxes. Before leaving, I wrote a letter to my mother. Mom, I've found my own place and am moving out today. I won't be coming back for the rest of my things right away. I need some time and space to process what's happened between us. I never thought I would feel like a stranger in my childhood home, but that's what I've become. For years, I've watched you prioritize Megan's whims over my needs, dismiss my feelings, and use my strength against me. The conversation I overheard last night confirmed what I've suspected for a long time. In your eyes, my independence makes me less deserving of support, while Megan's dependence makes her more worthy of your attention and resources. That's not how family should work. Love and support shouldn't be conditional on neediness or vulnerability. They should be given freely, especially to the children who have proven themselves responsible and trustworthy. I need some distance to figure out what kind of relationship I want with you moving forward. Please respect that, and don't show up at my workplace or try to find my new address. Savannah. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter, took one last look around the home that no longer felt like mine, and left. My new apartment was tiny, sterile, and depressingly impersonal, a stark contrast to the home I'd just left. But as I unpacked my few possessions, I felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. For the first time in years, I was in a space that was entirely mine, where no one could make me feel unwelcome or inconvenient. That night, as I sat on my newly purchased air mattress, my phone lit up with messages from Mom. Savannah, where are you? We came home and found your letter. Please call me. We need to talk about this. You're overreacting. We can work this out. I turned off my phone, curled up under a blanket from my childhood, and finally allowed myself to cry for everything I had lost. Not just a room or a house, but the security of knowing I had a place where I truly belonged. The first weeks in my new apartment were a brutal adjustment. Beyond the emotional toll of the estrangement from my mother, the financial reality hit hard. My carefully accumulated savings intended for a home down payment rapidly dwindled as I covered the security deposit, first month's rent, basic furniture, and essential household items. The studio apartment was in an older building with maintenance issues, a persistently dripping faucet, temperamental heating, and paper-thin walls that left me privy to my neighbors' arguments and late-night activities. At work, I threw myself into projects with renewed intensity, staying late, and volunteering for additional responsibilities. Colleagues noticed the change. Everything okay, Savannah? My supervisor asked after I had stayed until 9 p.m. 3 nights in a row. You've been putting in a lot of extra hours lately. Just focused on the Henderson campaign, I replied with a forced smile. Trying to make sure we exceed their expectations. The truth was that work provided an escape from my empty apartment and the thoughts that ambushed me there. Questions about where I had gone wrong, whether I could have somehow prevented the rupture with my mother if I should have seen the signs earlier and protected myself better. My phone continued to accumulate messages from my mother, evolving from concern to defensiveness. "Savannah, please call me back. I'm worried about you. This isn't like you disappearing without talking things through. I understand you're upset, but this reaction is extreme. Brian thinks you're being manipulative by leaving this way. Megan feels terrible about this situation. She says you can store some of your things in the basement if you need to." That last message particularly stung. The casual confirmation that Megan had indeed taken over my room, completely relegating my remaining belongings to basement storage, as if I were a distant relative rather than a daughter. After 2 weeks of silence, Catherine's tone shifted again. "I don't understand why you're punishing me like this. I've always supported you." "Your silence is very hurtful. We're family. We should be able to talk through our problems." "Dad called me asking questions. Are you trying to turn him against me too?" I hadn't asked my father to contact her, but I wasn't surprised he had. Despite their divorce, he had always tried to maintain civil communication when it concerned me. Brian also attempted to mediate, sending a lengthy text message that read more like a lecture. "Savannah, your mother is very upset by your abrupt departure and ongoing silence. While I understand you were disappointed about the room situation, your reaction has been disproportionate and immature. Family disagreements should be handled through open communication, not dramatic exits and silent treatments. As the adult you claim to be, I expect you to reach out to your mother and begin repairing this unnecessary damage to your relationship." His message only reinforced my decision to maintain distance. The condescension, the dismissal of my feelings as disproportionate, the implication that I was being childish rather than setting necessary boundaries. All of it confirmed that my perspective would never be truly heard or valued in that household. Meanwhile, Megan wasted no time documenting her glam room transformation on social media. Through mutual acquaintances, I saw posts of my childhood bedroom being gutted, walls painted a soft pink, my desk replaced with a vanity surrounded by ring lights, floating shelves displaying cosmetics where my books had once been. In one particularly painful post, she posed in front of my bay window, now draped with gauzy white curtains, with the caption, "So grateful for my supportive parents giving me this amazing space to pursue my dreams. #blessed, #glamroom, #beauty influencer." No mention of whose room it had been, whose dreams had been displaced to make room for hers. As October arrived, bringing with it fall colors and cooling temperatures, the first major family holiday loomed: Thanksgiving. My mother's texts took on a new urgency. "We're planning Thanksgiving dinner for the 25th. Will you be joining us?" Megan's invited some of her influencer friends. The thought of returning to that house, sitting at the table with Megan and her friends pretending everything was normal while my bedroom had been erased, it was unbearable. I declined with a brief message. "I won't be able to make it this year. I have other plans." I had no other plans. I spent Thanksgiving alone in my apartment with takeout from Boston Market and a bottle of wine, watching old movies and trying not to think about the family gatherings of previous years. December brought Christmas preparations and another wave of guilt-inducing messages from my mother. "I've bought your gifts already. Please reconsider coming for Christmas Eve. It won't be the same without you." Megan asked if you'll be here for the holiday. She has something she wants to give you. I doubted that very much. In 5 years, Megan had never once given me a thoughtful gift. Her offerings were typically last-minute purchases that revealed how little attention she paid to my interests or preferences. After much internal debate, I agreed to a brief Christmas Day visit, not staying for dinner, just a short afternoon appearance to exchange gifts. The decision was driven less by desire for reconciliation and more by a need to prove to myself that I could face them without falling apart. Walking into my former home that day was surreal. Christmas decorations were familiar yet different. New ornaments on the tree, different garlands on the mantel. Gifts for Megan dominated the space beneath the tree, wrapped in coordinating paper and bows. "Savannah." Mom rushed to embrace me, her hug tight and desperate. "I'm so glad you came." I returned the hug stiffly, then stepped back to greet the others. Brian nodded cordially. Megan offered a wave from the couch where she was documenting the Christmas aesthetic for her social media. The visit was as awkward as I had anticipated. Conversation remained superficial. Work updates, weather comments, safe topics that wouldn't trigger the underlying tension. My gift from Mom and Brian was a gift card to a home goods store, practical but impersonal. Megan gave me a sample-sized perfume that I suspected was a free gift with purchase from her own shopping. As I prepared to leave after less than 2 hours, Mom followed me to the door. "Can't you stay longer?" she pleaded. "We've hardly had time to talk." "I have plans," I lied. "But thanks for having me." "Savannah," she said, her voice dropping to ensure the others couldn't hear. "I miss you. This separation isn't what I wanted." "But the outcome is exactly what you wanted," I replied quietly. "Megan has my room. Your family unit is intact. The only difference is I'm not here watching it happen." Her face fell. "That's not fair. You're still part of this family." "Am I?" I asked. "Because from where I stand, I was disposable when something more important came along." I left before she could respond, the hollow feeling in my chest expanding with each step away from the house where I had grown up, but no longer belonged. January brought an unexpected lifeline in the form of a coworker, Amanda, who noticed my subdued demeanor at the company New Year's party. "Holiday family drama?" she asked, sliding into the seat beside me. Something about her direct but compassionate approach broke through my carefully maintained composure. Before I knew it, I was sharing the condensed version of my situation: the room, the ultimatum, the estrangement. "That's brutal," she said when I finished. "Feeling replaced by a step-sibling is hard enough without your own parent facilitating it." Her validation, the simple acknowledgement that what had happened was indeed brutal, released something inside me. For months I had questioned whether I was overreacting, whether the hurt I felt was disproportionate to the situation. "My parents divorced when I was 12, Amanda shared. "My dad remarried a woman with twin boys who suddenly became the center of his universe. I get it." She invited me to dinner at her family's home the following weekend. "My mom makes enough food for an army and she loves adopting strays," she explained with a warm smile. That dinner became a turning point. Amanda's mother, Elaine, welcomed me with genuine warmth. Her home was chaotic in the best way, filled with mismatched furniture, eclectic art, and the comfortable clutter of a place where people actually lived rather than just performed living. Amanda's brothers dropped by with their families, friends stopped in for dessert, and through it all, I was treated as if I belonged. "You come back any time," Elaine insisted as I prepared to leave. "Sunday dinners are an open invitation." I began attending these Sunday gatherings regularly, gradually opening up to Amanda and Elaine about the full extent of my family situation. With their encouragement, I also started seeing a therapist, beginning the slow process of unpacking years of subtle emotional neglect. "What you're describing is a pattern," Dr. Rivera explained during one session. "Your mother withdrawing support as a response to your competence while rewarding your stepsister's dependence with attention and resources. It's not uncommon in blended families, but understanding the pattern doesn't make it hurt any less." Through therapy, I began to recognize how my mother's behavior had shaped my own. My fierce independence, my reluctance to ask for help, my tendency to minimize my own needs. I hadn't become self-sufficient solely out of virtue. I had adapted to survive in an environment where my needs were secondary. In February, my father visited Chicago for a conference, and we met for dinner at a neutral restaurant downtown. The physical distance in our relationship made our conversation both easier and more difficult. Easier because he wasn't enmeshed in the daily dynamics with Mom and Brian; more difficult because he didn't fully understand the context of what had happened. "I've spoken to your mother several times," he admitted over dinner. "She's upset about how things stand between you two." "I'm upset too," I replied. "But I'm not the one who chose Megan's makeup videos over my housing stability." He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I know, and I'm not defending her choices. I worry about you being so isolated from family." "I'm not isolated," I told him, thinking of Amanda's family and the other connections I was building. I'm just being more selective about who I allow to have influence over my life. He nodded, a hint of sadness in his eyes. I should have been more present after the divorce. Maybe things would have been different. Maybe, I acknowledged. But we can't change the past. We can only decide how to move forward. We agreed to make more effort to stay connected. Regular phone calls, possible visits when our schedules allowed. It wasn't a perfect resolution to years of distance, but it was a start. 6 months after moving out, I had established a new rhythm to my life. My apartment, while still small, had become more personalized and comfortable. I had received another promotion at work, allowing me to start rebuilding my savings. I had a growing circle of friends, and Amanda's family continued to provide the warmth and acceptance I had lost. My contact with my mother remained minimal. Brief text exchanges, occasional updates about major life events. She had stopped pushing for reconciliation, but continued to reach out, a holding pattern neither of us seemed ready to break. Then came the unexpected call that would shift our relationship once again. "Savannah." My mother's voice was tentative when I answered. "I was wondering if you might have time to help me with something. It's for Megan's influencer profile. She needs some marketing advice, and I thought of you immediately." The request was so tone-deaf, so perfectly emblematic of our dysfunctional dynamic, that I couldn't hold back anymore. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice calm despite the anger rising inside me. "You kick me out of my childhood home to make room for Megan's makeup studio, barely acknowledge the hurt that caused, and now you're calling me for free marketing consultation to help her career." "I thought you might want to help your sister," she replied defensively. "Stepsister," I corrected. "And no, I don't want to help the person who took my room and displaced me from my home." "Savannah, that's not fair. It wasn't Megan's decision. Brian and I—" "Exactly," I interrupted. "It was your decision. You chose to prioritize Megan's whim over my stability. You chose to frame my independence as a reason to withdraw support while rewarding Megan's dependence with endless resources. You chose Brian's approval over your relationship with me." The line went silent for so long I thought she might have hung up. Then, in a small voice, "I never saw it that way." "Of course you didn't," I replied. "You were too busy creating the perfect blended family to notice you were erasing me from it." More silence, then a sound I hadn't expected. My mother crying. "I'm sorry," she finally managed. "I'm so sorry, Savannah." The apology, though unexpected, wasn't enough to erase months of hurt. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "But I need more than words right now." "Tell me what you need," she said, her voice steadier. "I want to make this right." "I need you to really hear me," I said. "Not dismiss my feelings or defend your actions. I need you to understand how deeply it hurt to be treated as disposable in my own family." "Can we meet?" she asked. "Face to face, I want to listen. Really listen." I agreed to coffee 2 days later, setting a firm time limit of 1 hour. The boundary was as much for my protection as it was a test. Would she respect this small limitation, or would she push for more as she had so often in the past? Catherine arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early, a departure from her usual carefully timed entrances. She looked different, smaller somehow, without the polished confidence I was accustomed to seeing. Her hair showed hints of gray she had previously colored religiously, and the lines around her eyes seemed more pronounced. "Savannah," she said when I arrived, standing awkwardly as if unsure whether to hug me. "Thank you for meeting me." I nodded, maintaining the physical distance between us. "Let's get coffee first." We ordered and found a quiet table in the corner away from the main traffic of the busy cafe. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the weight of months of estrangement hanging between us. "You look good," she finally offered. "The new job agrees with you." "It does," I confirmed. "I've been promoted again, senior marketing manager now." "That's wonderful," she said, genuine pride crossing her features. "You always were brilliant at what you do." The compliment, though appreciated, highlighted part of our problem. Her pride in my achievements had always come with an unspoken expectation that those achievements meant I needed less support, less nurturing. "Mom," I said directly, "I didn't come here for small talk. You said you wanted to listen. I need to know if you're really prepared to hear things that might be difficult for you." She squared her shoulders, a familiar gesture of bracing herself. Yes, I am. I took a deep breath and began to articulate the hurt I had carried for so long, not just about the room ultimatum, but about years of subtle displacement. I described how it felt to watch her gradually shift her maternal energy toward Megan, how painful it was to see my strengths used as justification for withdrawing support, how the message I received was that I mattered less because I caused fewer problems. The night you told me to move out, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion behind the words, you framed it as a natural progression because I was established and Megan needed help starting out. But what you were really saying was that my goals, my plans, my needs were less important than hers. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't interrupt or become defensive as she might have in the past. And the most painful part, I continued, was hearing you say that if I were more vulnerable, people would want to take care of me too. As if I had to perform neediness to deserve my mother's support. She wiped at her eyes, nodding slightly. I said that. I remember. Do you understand how deeply that hurt, to learn that my strength, something I thought you valued in me, was actually the reason you felt justified in prioritizing Megan? I do now, she said quietly. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, about the patterns in our relationship. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. She took a shaky breath before continuing. The truth is, Savannah, I've always been a little in awe of you. You were so capable, so determined even as a child. When things fell apart with your father, you adapted with a resilience I envied. And after I married Brian, you continued to thrive despite all the changes. Because I had to, I pointed out. What choice did I have? I know, she acknowledged. But in my mind, I started to see your strength as evidence that you didn't need me as much. Megan was different. She struggled with the divorce, with school, with making friends. Her need was so obvious, so consuming. It was easy to pour myself into helping her because the results were immediate and visible. While I just kept handling things on my own, I finished for her. Yes, she admitted. I took the path of least resistance. Megan's demands were louder, more urgent. Brian was focused on making her happy. And you never complained, never made waves. I told myself you were fine, that your independence was a virtue rather than a necessity. I wasn't fine, I said softly. I was lonely. I was hurt. I was watching myself become increasingly peripheral in your life. I failed you, she said, meeting my eyes directly. Not just with the room situation, though, that was certainly the breaking point. I failed you over years of small choices that consistently put your needs last. And I'm deeply, truly sorry. The sincerity in her voice reached something inside me that had been closed off for months. It wasn't enough to erase the hurt, but it was a beginning, an acknowledgement of the reality I had experienced, rather than a defensive rewriting of events. Thank you for saying that, I replied. I needed to hear it. There's more, she continued, her hands fidgeting with her coffee cup. Things have been changing at home. Brian and I have been struggling. He doesn't understand why I've been dwelling on the past, as he puts it. He thinks I should get over it and move forward. That sounds like Brian, I observed. She nodded. He's always been good at compartmentalizing uncomfortable emotions, but I can't compartmentalize this. What happened between us? The way I let you be pushed aside? It's made me question everything about our blended family, about the compromises I've made. What about Megan? I asked, curious despite myself. Catherine sighed. Megan's influencer career isn't going as planned. The equipment, the room renovation, the lighting, none of it has translated into the success she expected. She's frustrated, blaming the algorithm rather than examining her content or work ethic. I wasn't surprised. Megan's pattern had always been initial enthusiasm, followed by frustration and abandonment when immediate success didn't materialize. And how are you handling that? I asked. Differently than I would have 6 months ago, she admitted. I've stopped rushing in to solve her problems. I've suggested she take some business classes if she's serious about making this a career. Brian thinks I'm being cold, but I'm starting to see how our different parenting approaches created this imbalance between you and Megan. This shift in my mother's perspective surprised me. That's a significant change. Losing you from my life forced me to reevaluate a lot of things, she said simply. I don't like who I became in trying to please Brian and accommodate Megan. I don't like the mother I was to you. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call, Brian's name flashing on the screen. She silenced it without answering. He calls constantly when I'm out. She explained, a note of weariness in her voice. He's become more controlling since you left. Or maybe he always was, and I'm just noticing it more now. Mom, I said cautiously, are you okay? In your marriage, I mean. She was quiet for a moment, considering the question, with a thoughtfulness I hadn't seen from her in years. I don't know, she finally answered. For the first time, I'm allowing myself to ask that question honestly. Brian and we've always had a certain dynamic. He makes most of the decisions, I support them. It worked for me, or I thought it did. But lately I've been pushing back, questioning things, and he doesn't like it. What kind of things? I asked. Everything from household expenses to Megan's future plans. Last week I suggested that if her makeup career doesn't take off, she might need to consider getting a regular job to support herself. Brian was furious, said I was undermining her confidence and creativity. The conversation had taken an unexpected turn, shifting from my grievances to my mother's awakening to her own situation. It was both unsettling and strangely validating to hear her questioning the family dynamic that had seemed so immutable. What do you want now, Mom? I asked as our hour neared its end. From me, from our relationship. I want a second chance, she said without hesitation. Not to go back to how things were, that clearly wasn't working, but to build something new, something healthier. I want to be the mother you deserve, not just the mother that was convenient for everyone else. I'm not ready to jump back into family dinners and holidays, I cautioned. There's too much hurt still healing. I understand, she nodded. Could we maybe start small coffee like this, just the two of us once a month? No Brian, no Megan, no pressure. Just us rebuilding at whatever pace feels right to you. The request was reasonable, respectful of my boundaries, and acknowledged the need for gradual rebuilding rather than an immediate return to normal. It was perhaps the first time my mother had approached our relationship on my terms rather than hers. I think I can do that, I agreed. Once a month, just us. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. That's more than I had hoped for. As we prepared to leave, she hesitated, then reached into her purse. I almost forgot. I brought something for you. She handed me a small velvet pouch. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet I recognized immediately. It had belonged to my grandmother. Mom, this is Grandma's bracelet. You always said it would go to Megan someday because she admired it so much. It should be yours, she said firmly. It was always meant for my daughter. I just lost sight of that for a while. The gesture, small but significant, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. It represented more than just jewelry. It was a tangible symbol of my mother's shifting priorities, of my reinstatement as her daughter, rather than an afterthought. Thank you, I said carefully, securing it around my wrist. As we parted ways outside the coffee shop, Catherine hugged me. A brief, tentative embrace that I returned equally cautiously. It wasn't the comfortable, automatic affection we had once shared, but it was a beginning. Walking back to my apartment, I felt a subtle shift in the weight I had been carrying. The hurt wasn't gone, the trust wasn't fully restored, but for the first time in months, I could imagine a path forward. Not back to what had been, but towards something new that honored both my independence and my need for familial connection. 1 year after moving out of my childhood home, I stood in the foyer of my new apartment, a one-bedroom with large windows and a small balcony in a safer neighborhood with better amenities. It wasn't the house I had originally been saving for, but it was mine, secured through my own efforts without family support. The journey to this moment had been neither straight nor easy. The monthly coffee meetings with my mother had gradually evolved into lunch dates, then occasional dinner outings, Always just the two of us building a relationship independent of Brian and Megan. Our conversations had deepened, moving beyond careful politeness to honest exchanges about both past and present. "I've been seeing a therapist," my mother had confided during one of our early lunches. "She's helping me understand patterns I didn't even recognize, how I traded my autonomy for security with Brian, how I projected my own insecurities onto my parenting." This willingness to examine her own behavior marked a significant departure from the defensive stance she had maintained for years. More surprisingly, she had begun setting boundaries with both Brian and Megan. Brian wanted to redecorate the living room again. Megan thinks the current aesthetic isn't on brand for her videos, she told me over dinner in July. I said no. It's been less than 2 years since the last renovation, and frankly, we need to be more careful with money. How did he take that? I asked, genuinely curious. Not well, she admitted with a wry smile. There was the usual talk about supporting Megan's dreams and investing in her future, but I held firm. It felt good. Scary, but good. These small assertions of independence accumulated, gradually shifting the power dynamic in her marriage. When Brian insisted on an expensive vacation that would deplete their savings, Catherine proposed a more modest alternative and stuck to her position. When Megan wanted to quit her part-time retail job because it was interfering with her content creation, Catherine refused to supplement her income. "I'm learning that saying no doesn't make me a bad mother or wife," she explained. "It just makes me a person with my own values and boundaries." The growing tension in her marriage became increasingly apparent with each meeting. Brian called and texted constantly when she was out with me, his messages becoming more demanding and accusatory. "He says I'm choosing you over our family," she confided during a particularly difficult period. "As if you're not family too." "Are you okay?" I asked, concerned by the strain evident in her face. "Is it safe for you at home?" "It's not physical," she assured me quickly. "Just tense. Lots of silence, lots of passive-aggressive comments. Megan alternates between ignoring me and trying to guilt me about abandoning her career." By September, Catherine had made a decision that shocked me. She was considering separation from Brian. "I've consulted a lawyer," she told me over coffee, "just to understand my options. 15 years is a long time to be married, but I'm realizing it's not too late to make a change." "Are you sure about this?" I asked, concerned about the upheaval such a decision would bring to her life. "Not entirely," she admitted. "But I'm sure that I can't keep living in a household where my opinions are dismissed, my boundaries are ignored, and my relationship with my daughter is treated as a betrayal." Her willingness to consider such a dramatic change for the sake of our rebuilt relationship moved me deeply. The mother who had once prioritized harmony at any cost was learning to stand up for what, and who, truly mattered to her. My relationship with my father had also evolved over the year. Our phone calls became more regular, and I had even visited him in Seattle for a long weekend. Away from the dynamics of my mother's household, we found new common ground. A shared love of hiking, similar taste in books, the same dry sense of humor. "I should have fought harder to be part of your daily life after the divorce," he acknowledged as we walked along Puget Sound. "I told myself the distance was too great, that occasional visits were enough. I was wrong." "We can't change the past," I reminded him, echoing our conversation from a year before. "But we're here now." Building this adult relationship with my father was healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. The abandonment I had felt at 14 eased as I came to understand him as a flawed person who had made mistakes but genuinely loved me. Perhaps the most profound change over the year had been my expanding concept of family. Amanda and her mother Elaine had become constants in my life, inviting me into their home and traditions with unreserved warmth. Friends from work and my apartment building formed a supportive community. Even my therapist, Dr. Rivera, had become an important presence, guiding me through the process of setting healthy boundaries while remaining open to reconciliation. "Family isn't just about blood or legal ties," Dr. Rivera had observed during one session. "It's about who shows up for you consistently, who respects your boundaries, who celebrates your strengths rather than using them against you." This broader understanding of family, allowed me to approach my relationship with my mother with greater clarity. I could love her, forgive her, and rebuild our connection without ignoring the painful lessons of the past. I could maintain firm boundaries while still opening myself to deeper connection. As I arranged my new apartment, hanging artwork, organizing bookshelves, creating a space that reflected my tastes and priorities, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with perfect resolution. My mother was still navigating her troubled marriage, my relationship with Brian remained distant and cool, and Megan continued to view me with resentment for turning her father's wife against her. But amid these ongoing complications, I had found my footing. The painful ejection from my childhood home had forced me to confront hard truths about family dynamics, about conditional love, about my own worth, independent of others' validation. The journey had been brutal at times, but the destination, this newfound sense of self and purpose, made the struggle worthwhile. When my doorbell rang that evening, it was my mother arriving for the small housewarming gathering I had planned. She carried a houseplant and a bottle of wine, looking both nervous and hopeful. "It's beautiful," she said, taking in the apartment. "So perfectly you." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely pleased by her approval. "It feels like home." She set her gifts on the counter, then turned to me with uncharacteristic hesitation. "I have something to tell you. I've signed a lease on an apartment. I'm moving out next month." "You're really doing it?" I asked, surprised by the finality of her decision. "Separating from Brian." She nodded. "It's time. I've spent too many years compromising myself away piece by piece. Watching you rebuild your life this past year, seeing your strength and determination, it inspired me. If my 32-year-old daughter can start over, so can I." "It won't be easy," I cautioned, thinking of the financial and emotional challenges ahead for her. "Few worthwhile things are," she replied with a small smile. "But I'm ready. And I was hoping you might help me navigate this transition. You've become quite the expert at fresh starts." The request touched me deeply, not because she needed my help, but because she was acknowledging my experience and insight rather than dismissing them. "Of course I will," I promised. "Whatever you need." As other guests began to arrive, Amanda and Elaine, colleagues from work, neighbors from my building, I watched my mother integrate herself into this collection of people who had become my chosen family. There was an openness to her I hadn't seen in years, a willingness to engage without controlling, to listen without defending. Later, as the gathering wound down and guests began to leave, my mother helped me clear away glasses and plates. "Thank you for including me tonight," she said as we worked side by side in the kitchen, "for letting me be part of this new chapter in your life." "Thank you for being here," I replied, "for showing up consistently this past year even when it was difficult." She paused, a wine glass in hand, her expression thoughtful. "You know, when you moved out, I thought I had lost you forever. I couldn't see then that what was breaking wasn't our relationship. It was the unhealthy pattern we had established. Sometimes things need to break apart completely before they can be rebuilt properly." Her insight surprised me. This was a level of self-awareness I had not expected from the mother who had once been so resistant to examining her own behavior. "I'm proud of you, Mom," I said honestly, "for doing the hard work of changing, for being brave enough to start over." She smiled, tears gathering in her eyes. "I'm proud of you too, Savannah. Not just for your career success or your independence, though those are certainly impressive, but for having the courage to stand up for yourself, to demand better treatment, to walk away when staying would have cost you your self-respect." We finished cleaning in comfortable silence, the words between us holding more weight than any elaborate declaration could have conveyed. When she left, her hug was no longer tentative but firm and warm, the embrace of a mother who had nearly lost her daughter and understood the precious nature of second chances. Standing in my new home after everyone had gone, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. The painful ejection from my childhood bedroom had set in motion a chain of events that ultimately led to greater self-knowledge, stronger boundaries, and more authentic relationships. What had seemed like an ending had become a beginning, not just for me, but for my mother as well. Life rarely offers perfect resolutions. Brian would likely continue to view me as the catalyst for his marital problems, rather than recognizing his own controlling behavior. Megan would probably maintain her narrative of victimhood rather than examining her sense of entitlement. These relationships remained works in progress with uncertain outcomes. But some questions had been answered definitively. I knew my worth was not contingent on performing vulnerability or neediness. I understood that healthy love makes room for both strength and softness. I had learned that family is defined not by obligation, but by consistent care and mutual respect. And perhaps most importantly, I had discovered that sometimes being kicked out of a room opens the door to a much larger, more expansive life, one furnished with self-respect, meaningful connections, and the freedom to define family on my own terms. Have you ever had to rebuild family relationships after feeling replaced or pushed aside? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Please hit the like button if this resonated with you, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories. Share this with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary for creating healthier relationships. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and growth. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.